Well, last week on Friday, when we saw that extraordinary scene in the Oval Office at the White House, we knew, I think all of us knew, how this was going to end. It was going to end with Zelensky, president of Ukraine, hat in hand, coming back to the president and admitting what a complete and total F-up he was. And it appears as though that's what we got. I mean, he's been dancing around the issue. He's been defiant. He's been playing footsie with all of Europe, who constantly went out there and said, yeah, we stand with Ukraine as long as we have U.S. backing, which means they don't stand with Ukraine unless we're paying for the shoes. So here it is, the post we've all been waiting for, brought to you by Elon Musk and the X platform. Volodymyr Zelensky. Don't forget that second Y. It's very important. I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. Now, by the way, the last we heard from Zelensky yesterday, he told the LA Times that peace with Russia, or the end of the war with Russia, was a very, very, very long way away. Right? That's yesterday. Today, he wants to reiterate his commitment to peace. None of us want an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Isn't this the exact diplomacy that J.D. Vance was talking about in the Oval Office when Zelensky did his little drama queen act? I think so. Nobody wants peace more than Ukrainians. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We are ready to work fast to end the war, and the first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and truce in the sea immediately if Russia will do the same. Why didn't he say this Friday? It would have been so simple. Or even better, don't say anything, dude, and wait until you're behind closed doors. Then we want to move very fast through all the next stages and to work with the U.S. to agree a strong final deal. It's really funny how he keeps pressing the fact that they want immediacy, that they want to work fast, that they don't want to hesitate. That's like, who does this sound like? Who do you think he's actually trying to communicate with in terms of, oh, we're on the same page? This is Trump. Trump could have written this for him. Trump maybe did write this for him. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence, and we remember the moment when things changed, when President Trump provided Ukraine with javelins. We are grateful for this. Remember at the Oval Office meeting on Friday when Trump was saying, Obama gave you sheets, he meant blankets. Obama gave you sheets, I gave you javelins. Don't come here and talk to me about me not understanding what's going on the ground there. But meanwhile, you went and campaigned for Team Obama in Pennsylvania. Our meeting in Washington and the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. Whose fault is that, pal? It's regrettable that it happened this way. It is time to make things right. We would like future cooperation and communication to be constructive regarding the agreement on minerals and security. Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time and in any convenient format. We see this agreement as a step forward, greater security and a solid security guarantees, and I truly hope it will work effectively. A couple of things stick out to me about this, and then we'll go to Vice President Vance's appearance on Hannity last night. The first is, it looks like Trump telling him to take a hike on Friday sent Zelensky packing. He got 72 hours to go take the temperature of European leaders. They all put on a good show. They waved for the camera. They all stood with him, physically stood with him. They all put out posts on X in support of him. But when push came to shove, Zelensky learned a very valuable lesson here over the course of the last 3 days, that ultimately nothing happens there without the United States. Nothing happens there without your help, without the American people's help. And the American people just put Donald Trump in charge of this negotiation. You may not like that. You may like talking to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Chris Murphy, of all people, but that ain't what the American people want. And so if you want our money, if you want our support, you need to deal with Donald Trump. And he learned that. He learned that after 3 days. He learned that after trying to cobble together some sort of new European Union that doesn't need America. And they realized, oh, wait, we do need America. It's pretty clear there. And also, by the way, in terms of these security guarantees, first of all, the greatest security guarantee is to engage in business. Did you notice yesterday, underreported story, that in the White House, a CEO for a Taiwanese chip manufacturer appeared with President Trump in the White House announcing a $100 billion agreement to manufacture chips in Arizona, creating 20,000 jobs. Now, why is that important? Obviously, it's great for our economy. It's great for jobs. It's great that we're getting jobs that we were told could never happen in America. No, you have to exploit cheap labor in Asia to be able to build things like this. We can't compete. Well, clearly we can compete. But what's the other most important thing about this? What country are we talking about here? What country has just cemented a $100 billion, 20,000 plus jobs initiative with the United States of America through a chip manufacturer? What country? Taiwan. Taiwan, who has China on their doorstep right now, who wants to secure a relationship with the United States, who wants to ensure that if any crap goes down over in the Pacific, the U.S. Navy and the United States Marine Corps are at the ready to protect Taiwan. So what did they do? Did they make a scene in the Oval Office? Did they stamp their feet? Did they scream that they wanted security agreements? No. They came and they made a business deal to engage in commerce with us because that ensures a security agreement. 24 hours after that, less than 24 hours, Zelensky's ready for his mineral deal because he now recognizes that if there are boots on the ground in Ukraine, more likely they're going to be European boots, which makes more sense, by the way. They can send their troops. We've got money. We've got weapons, and we have a business deal. Boots on the ground? No. Wingtip shoes from the CEO and upper management vice presidents of sales and manufacturing over the mineral rights? Yeah, those will be the footwear on the ground in Ukraine, and that will give him all the security he wants. The bottom line is, who was happiest when Zelensky threw his temper tantrum? Vladimir Putin. And everybody knows that. But no one on CNN or MSNBC will tell you that. Or if they do, they'll say, Trump gave Putin what he wanted. No. Zelensky gave Putin what he wanted. There's one other thing about this that sticks out to me. Our meeting in Washington, he saved this for the second to last paragraph. Maybe he should have led with this. Our meeting in Washington and the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. It is regrettable that it happened this way. That's very passive language, isn't it? It's very removed. It's very third person. The meeting didn't go the way it was supposed to be, and it's regrettable. It's regrettable is not the same as I am sorry. It's regrettable is not the same as I was wrong and I apologize. It didn't go the way it was supposed to be is not the same as boy, did I screw up. Now, this is international diplomacy. These are people behind the scenes negotiating language of public statements like this. And he is a world leader. He is a leader of a nation, at least. And maybe it is difficult for a president of a country to have to humble himself to that level. And maybe this was the agreed upon language. But I know if my children did something wrong and they were supposed to apologize for it, I wouldn't accept language like that. Because that's not actually taking ownership and responsibility for what you did wrong and acknowledging what you did wrong. It's passive, it's third party, it's removed from any personal connection, but that's fine. This may be where it is, but that's huge. This is Zelensky caving in to Trump and giving him really what he wants. We'll see what Trump has to say in response. Meanwhile, this comes on the heels of a stellar appearance by Vice President J.D. Vance on Sean Hannity last night, where they talked about exactly what happened at the Oval Office.
Yeah, great TV. As the president said. Yeah, well, it's funny. So we have a 45-minute press conference, and the president normally does this. I mean, I've seen this now 3 or 4 times with foreign leaders where he likes to bring the media in, likes to have a conversation, but answer questions with the press. As you know, he's very open with reporters. And what I noticed is that for the first 25, 30 or so minutes, he tried to sort of bend over backwards to be gracious and kind to Zelensky, even when Zelensky was kind of needling him, even when Zelensky was saying things that I thought were untrue. The president just tried to be diplomatic, right? I think that's his natural instinct in that situation. And then when it really went off the rails, of course, is when I asked, or you had a Polish journalist who asked a question, the president answered it, and then I answered it. And then something about my answer just really set Zelensky off. So then he came at me.
So you're blaming yourself.
then I went back at him.
Right.
And what I tried to do originally was actually try to diffuse the situation a little bit. Because I'm like, we're having this meeting. Obviously, there are 100 television cameras here. Let's try to have this conversation in private. And then the president, as we kept on going back and forth, I tried again to say, well, maybe we should have this conversation in private. And the president was like, nope, actually, I don't want to have it in private anymore. I want to have this actual conversation in public for the American people to see. And I do think that there was just a certain sense of, there was a lack of respect. There was a certain sense of entitlement. And most importantly, look, we can look past all of that stuff, but the president has set a very clear goal for his administration. He wants the killing to stop. And I think that it's very important that President Zelensky and of course President Putin too, they've both got to come to the negotiating table. And that's ultimately where things broke apart. I really don't care what President Zelensky says about me or anybody else, but he showed a clear unwillingness to engage in the peace process that President Trump has said is the policy of the American people and of their president. That's the real breakdown. Is I think Zelensky wasn't yet there. And I think frankly now still isn't there, but I think he'll get there eventually. He has to.
Yeah. Okay. So now bear in mind that this was about 12, 14 hours before the post that we just read to you from President Zelensky. So as J.D. Vance communicates on behalf of the White House and really on behalf of the American government to President Zelensky, understand and listen and comprehend, soak in what Vance communicated last night, and then recall what you just read from Zelensky today. And it's pretty remarkable how well he came up to the plate. He stepped up. Here's a little bit more.
My understanding is he tried to get back in, or tried to stay a number of times, and then made numerous calls to come back. Is that true?
I don't know about numerous calls, but they certainly made at least one request to come back in and continue the conversation. The president was like, look, first of all, they were disrespectful. And second of all, what are we even going to talk about? They've shown a clear unwillingness to discuss the peaceful settlement that President Trump is trying to bring to the situation. I think a lot of Americans are sort of, it's useful to step back and ask ourselves, what is the actual plan here? You can't just fund the war forever. The American people won't stand for it. And by the way, Sean, if you look at European opinion polls, the Europeans aren't going to stand forever for it either. We need to bring this thing to a peaceful settlement. The president was trying to do that. He'll continue to try to do that, but you've got to have two to tango. You've got to have a negotiating partner in the Ukrainians who recognize that, of course they have their views, and of course they're not always going to agree with us, but they've got to participate in the conversation. They weren't willing to do that on Friday, so the president said, send them home.
Yeah. Again, if you hear what Vance said last night, and then you look at what Zelensky just said, he addressed all of these issues. Nobody wants a forever war. We want this to end as quickly as possible, right? I mean, it's like it's a completely night and day change. Vance went out last night and said, this is what needs to be said to fix this. And well, now it's been said. A little bit more from Vance last night, but he's good, isn't he? This J.D. Vance is good.
And look, in some ways, Sean, I get it. I get the frustration. I get the rage. It's their country. Of course, it's not our country, but you've got to accept cooler heads have got to prevail. This thing cannot go on forever. This is the important point. I'd say this to our, of course, most importantly, the Americans who are watching, but people all over the world. When you talk to leaders in private, whether they're Ukrainian or European, when you talk to people in private, they will tell you this cannot go on forever. There aren't enough Ukrainian lives, there isn't enough American money, and there isn't enough ammunition to fund this thing indefinitely. The only realistic pathway to bringing this thing to a settlement is President Trump's pathway. We encourage both President Zelensky and President Putin to follow that path.
Okay, now the next question from Hannity is, again, remember, this was last night. The question is, well, so where do we stand here? Is the door still open for Zelensky to sort of reinitiate what needs to happen? Well, again, in light of what we just read to you, that's just happened within the last half hour, where Zelensky basically said, let's go. I'm begging, literally begging to come back. Here was the answer to that question.
Is the door open? President Trump said Friday he can come back if he wants peace. Is that door still open today?
What President Trump has said clearly and consistently is, of course, the door is open so long as Zelensky is willing to seriously talk peace. You can't come into the Oval Office or anywhere else and refuse to even discuss the details of a peace deal. Look, this is not going to make anybody happy. The Russians are going to have to give up stuff. The Ukrainians are going to have to give up stuff. You can't come to the Oval Office and say, give us security guarantees. We won't even engage with you about what we're willing to give up. That's been the Ukrainian posture. When that posture changes, as President Trump said, when they're willing to talk peace, I think President Trump will be the first person to pick up the phone.
All right. Now, bear in mind that tonight, President Trump is going to be delivering a speech to a joint session of Congress. Anybody tells you this is a State of the Union address, just turn the channel, turn them off, click to another stream. They don't know what they're talking about. This is not a State of the Union, but it is a speech to the joint session of Congress. It is not a distinction without a difference, though. It is actually very important, the difference here. Will Trump announce the deal tonight? Right? I mean, whatever's going on behind the scenes right now, will he take the dramatic theatrical opportunity during the speech and say, and I'm happy to announce that just 1 hour ago, we signed this agreement. We've committed, right? That could be cool, right? And in attendance, of course, will be many members of Congress, members of the House of Representatives and the Senate, who shamefully, a year and a half ago, waved Ukrainian flags in that very same chamber when President Zelensky was addressing them. I mean, I don't know where Zelensky ever got the thought that we were going to support him no matter what the cost, no matter how long it took, and no matter what was at stake. Maybe it was Congress who led him down that road, but that's why we have elections. And what about those members of Congress and the Senate who up until Friday had been pretty stalwart supporters of President Zelensky? Well, Hannity wanted to know that.
You make of European leaders, quote, their voices of solidarity this weekend, because it's Lindsey Graham, who's been very supportive of Ukraine in this conflict. I mean, he was livid.
Yes.
And he said, if they want to now defend their own continent, let them go ahead and do it. Good luck to them.
Yeah. And my message to Ukrainians, by the way, to President Zelensky is, when you've lost Lindsey Graham, means you need to come to the negotiating table and recognize Donald Trump is the only game in town. He's the only person who I think has a meaningful plan to save that country. But, Sean, here's the problem with the Europeans. And a lot of these guys are our friends. They're our allies. We, of course, the president has a great relationship with a lot of European heads of state, and so do I, but they need to be realistic. Mm-hmm. And the craziest part about this, Sean, is that sometimes you'll have European heads of state who in public will puff up their chest and say, we're in it with President Zelensky for the next 10 years. And then in private, they'll pick up the phone and say, this can't go on forever. He has to come to the negotiating table. So I honestly don't care what the Europeans say in public. What I care is what they say in private. And what they need to be saying to President Zelensky is, this can't go on forever. The bloodshed, the killing, the economic devastation, it's making everyone worse off. The only pathway to, I think, back to peace and prosperity is what the president is trying to accomplish.
My goodness. You heard what he said, right? Two big messages right there. Number one, hey, Ukraine, when you've lost Lindsey Graham, you got to get back to the drawing board. And number two, he did the thing. He did his own meme. I really don't care, Margaret. Frankly, I don't really care what the Europeans think. None of our, hey, Europeans think this about us? Okay, and I don't really care, Margaret. I mean, that's become his watch cry now. It's sort of the motto of the vice president, and it seems to be effective. All right, well, stay tuned tonight for the joint session of Congress speech, and we'll see if President Trump makes a big announcement about this. We'll see if he accepts the non-apology from Zelensky. We'll see if this actually does move things along. The bottom line is, I think everybody involved, well, now, at least, are saying that they would like this war to end. Anyone of import, the vast majority of people, and certainly the vast majority of Americans, want the war to end. The question is how you do that. And it looks like perhaps we're a little closer to that now, certainly closer than we were at this time on Friday.